Episode number 238, NRB Backstage Pass, Part 2, with Phil Cooke and a walking person. NRB Backstage Pass, Part 2, with Phil Cooke and Yancy. Let's do it.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Hey guys, welcome to Making Sunday Happen. This is the definitive podcast for those who plan, create, and execute worship experiences all around the world. This week we're recording from Nashville, Tennessee at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. So over the next few weeks you'll see interviews from lots of people here at the convention. So thank you for listening and watching, and you are in for a treat over the next few weeks. So this week in our look backstage at NRB, I want to share interviews with church media consultant Phil Cooke and also worship leader Yancy. I talked with Phil about 10 ways to lead church creatives. It's very, very practical stuff. And we talked with Yancy about the importance of using media in your worship experience and how she uses lyric media, especially in her worship experiences for kids and students and adults. So, all right, here we go. 10 ways to lead church creatives with Phil Cooke. Check this out. Hey guys, I'm here with Phil Cooke. Phil, you did a workshop at NRB today all about how to design a creative culture, which really hits our audience right in the bullseye of our audience, because we're talking to creative people in the church on how to create content and also how to make Sunday happen at the church. So kind of give me an overview of the workshop.
Well, I've discovered over the many years working in media, television, film, consulting with churches and ministry organizations that we're pretty terrible at leading creative people. And if you're listening or watching and you're a creative person, you know pastors aren't trained in seminary to lead creative people. Most staff members aren't. And so the workshop was really 10 things that I thought are incredibly important that you need to understand for leading creative people. We just in the church need to understand how to lead, inspire, and motivate creatives.
So I want to hit on those real quick. All right. So the first one is that we need stability.
Yeah.
Walk me through that.
Well, it's interesting that how many leaders think if I threaten my team, it'll make them do better work. And I've discovered creative people do not respond to the fact that if I don't deliver this logo by tomorrow, we're going to lose a job. Or if we don't deliver that video by the deadline, we'll be out of business.
Yeah.
That starts to obsess and preoccupy creative people. Unless they're in a comfortable, secure, stable environment, they're not going to release their real creativity.
How does that balance with deadlines, though? So as a creative, sometimes it's good for me to have like a point.
It's a great point because deadlines matter. I actually believe constraining creativity helps unleash it. I can tell you, from me, I don't even start a project till I see the deadline in the distance. I don't lift that plane off the runway until the end of the runway is about there.
Yeah.
And there's a great quote about, I love deadlines. I love the whooshing sound they make when they fly by. But I think deadlines give you perspective. It helps the creative people plan. A lot of leaders think, we shouldn't give them deadlines. Let's just let them figure it out. But the truth is, as long as it's a realistic deadline, that matters. But at the same time, you're not threatening them with if you don't make the deadline, we're out of business. You've got to
Right,
let them
got
relax a little bit and unleash their creative skill.
So talk to me about criticism. So how as a leader, how can I go from take my team from the bad idea or the good idea even to great idea?
It's a great question, and maybe it's better put in a stage. In the early stages of developing ideas, brainstorming, I'm never critical. I don't care how stupid the idea is or how unrealistic it is. I just believe, put it out on the table, get it out there, because here's what happens. If I criticize you because of your idea, if I make fun of you, you're going to be embarrassed, you're going to shut down, and your next idea could be the one that saves the day.
I'm less likely the next
That's
time
exactly
to
right.
pitch my idea.
Yeah, and trust me, there's plenty of time down the road to weed through the bad ideas or the ideas that aren't on target. And even then, I just don't believe in excessive criticism. I think you want to inspire people to do great stuff. And I think if they're working at it and really focused, even ideas that are off target, they're not bad ideas. They just won't fit for this project.
Yeah. What about leaders being on the same page? So let's say senior leader and executive leader, maybe I'm hearing two different things and I'm going, wait, but my senior pastor said this.
Yeah.
Who do I need to listen to?
Well, that's really true. And what I've discovered is I've been brought in to do a project. Maybe it was rebrand a church or launch a website or launch a video series or whatever, do a TV program. And the pastor will call me in and he'll give me his vision for the project. Great. So we'll aim our guns in that direction and focus creatively on that. Well, 24 hours go by, I get a call from the executive pastor saying, well, the pastor's not exactly right. Let me tell you what we really need to focus on. Well, 24 hours go by, and then somebody else calls me on staff and says, well, actually, here's what we need to do. And so I'm an advocate that before you bring the creatives to the table, let's get all your leaders around the table and let's focus. I worked with one church recently where once they have a meeting like that, before they dismiss, the pastor goes around the table and says, do you agree? And they have to vocalize it. Do you agree? And if you don't, let's talk about it right now, because he doesn't want people leaving with a bunch of different arguments. So I think the key is get your leadership on the same page, so when you bring the creative team in, you're much more unified and focused on getting it done.
Do you make it to where, let's say you're working with an organization, do you make it where you say, okay, I'm going to listen to one point person. So you guys get your list of edits together, and I'm going to listen to this guy. How do you handle that?
Well, I handle it. First of all, I tell them it's a lot cheaper if they get all their changes together, criticism together, and deliver it once.
Right.
So
you charge them.
I do. When you do a project with Cooke Media Group, our team, you get 2 sets of changes. Beyond that, the cash register starts ringing. So it's really good to get them all figured out at one time. And also, it's just more efficient. We're going to be editing till Jesus comes if everybody is going to throw in their 2 cents about your logo or the position of the video or whatever. So it's really important. And you can do it in a positive way. You don't have to be. I'm always an advocate that and this is a really important point to make, creative people should never be jerks. The clients you're dealing with, the pastor, the ministry team you're dealing with, they're not professionals at this. They're not designers. They're not video producers. They don't get it. So we should be more gracious. At the same time, we know our boundaries and we're going to be firm.
Yeah. Tell me about flexibility. So as a creative, sometimes the best ideas hit me in the shower. So, or
totally.
Elsewhere.
Let me tell you a secret. There's actually a company, you'll love this. I was complaining about that recently. That's exactly, the water hits me, ideas flow. And I was complaining about that to my assistant, and she went online, found a company called Aqua Notes that make waterproof legal pads. So now I can write away in the shower and I'm good. So my productivity shot through the roof. But flexibility is an important issue, and the truth is, creatives think differently, they schedule differently, they operate differently, and they work differently. So it doesn't mean you have to change everything, but in my case, from 6 a.m. to noon, I can write like a madman. I can create, I can think through stuff, I'm brilliant. Afternoon, I'm worthless. I can do phone calls, I can do meetings, but I'm not going to have that creative intensity I had early in the morning. So the key is help them figure out where their time is. With my team at Cooke Media Group, I don't care about when they work as much as are we hitting the deadline? Right. Is it amazing? Is the client thrilled? Right. That's what matters to me.
Tell me about tools. How important is it for me to have maybe not the latest and greatest, but at least efficient tools to work with?
I do believe that we need to give our creatives the tools they need to work with. I mean, I look at it this way. You have a choice. you could have your creative team spend their time trying to upgrade, trying to do workarounds, trying to fix stuff, calling a friend about what to do with that old stupid equipment they have. Or they can have good equipment and focus on their creative time on doing amazing work. And so obviously, like you say, we all have budgets. We can't be unrealistic.
Right.
But at the same time, as much as possible, try to get your creatives the tools they need. I did a study one time of some of the greatest painters in history, the Van Goghs of the world, the Michelangelos of the world, the Rembrandts. And you'd be shocked at the amount of time they spent just figuring out the right brush, the right canvas, the paint mix, the tools they use for the combination of chemicals for their paint. And so tools matter to creative people. Nothing will excite a video editor more than making sure he's got the latest software and a computer that really hums. So I think if we can help them providing them tools, they'll help us by doing amazing work.
How do you push me out of my comfort zone as a leader?
Well, I think that the deadline that we talked about is a big part of that. Deadlines are a help. I also think it's our job as a leader of creative people to make them realize they're capable of more than they think. Doesn't mean we push them too hard or create unrealistic deadlines, but I think we need to inspire them in a way that makes them see. I've had only a handful of leaders that I've worked for over the years that made me realize I'm better than I thought I was. I mean, he really got me going, and we came up with stuff that I would have never dreamed about. So I'm a big believer that you've got to push them a little, understand how that whole dynamic works, but you need to inspire them to go better.
How do I get out of the way?
That's a big step. Once you've laid the vision for the project, once you've given them the parameters for the project, decided on the deadline, agreed to the deadline, get the heck out of the way. We all know that micromanaging leaders, as a leader, micromanaging is horrible. Let me tell you, micromanaging creative people is a disaster. It just doesn't work. And your job is, you're not, if you're a leader of creative people, chances are you're not a designer, you're not a video producer, you're not an editor. But one of the things I tell directors in Hollywood when I train directors is, the worst thing you can possibly do is when you film a scene, tell the actor to step aside, let me show you how to do this scene. That's because they'll just copy you. They don't want to put up with anything. They'll copy you. But the key is to set them up so they can discover what the heart of that scene is, and they'll amaze you every time. Same way with creatives. Help them discover what the vision is, and they'll do amazing work.
So tell me the difference between organizational structure and a communication structure.
This may be the most important thing I talked about in the workshop today, but I just think that we all need organizational structure. We need a pastor, an executive pastor, department heads. We need leaders of all kind of whatever company you're in. And that's important because the way things happen, the logistics, the billing, just a lot of budgets, a lot of things. However, when it comes to communication strategy, you got to throw that out the window. If a designer for you has to go through 5 layers of approval before he gets to the pastor who has the final say, that's a huge problem. A designer, a writer, a video editor should be able to go to the guy he needs to go to at any time.
The final decision
maker to get his opinion. So don't cover them over with layers and layers and layers. It's delaying, it's taking the wind out of their sails, and it's frustrating. So always remember that although organizational structure is important, when it comes to communication flow and communication structure, let it be free.
All right, so in your workshop, you talked about Ed Catmull and Creativity Inc., which I love that book. And you talked about how he would walk the floor and how he would give individual bonuses. Tell me that story.
As you know, he retired from being president of Disney Animation and Pixar Animation. And when a big blockbuster movie like Toy Story did well, the key animators would get a bonus. That was the way they were structured. And when that would happen, when the bonus would happen, it would be so easy for him just to direct deposit it in their account or email the information. But he had every check printed out personally, and he'd schedule time with every single one of those animators. And it may be 200 guys. And he would schedule an individual appointment with each one, sit down with them, talk to them, tell them how much he appreciated their work, how much confidence he had in them, and he would physically hand them that check. And I'll tell you, those guys would walk through fire for him because he just developed that relationship, made it personal, and their loyalty to him is just off the charts.
All right, last thing. How do I give them credit? What I heard you say is one of the killers for creativity, and I know this as a creative, is I did all the work, You take the credit for it. And I'm like, oh, man, I was the one that had that idea, did that. So as a leader, how do you let them?
Well, I've been in meetings where my creative team did the work, and people thanked me, and I had the opportunity to do. It's so easy. Trust me, it's just easy to take credit for other people's work. But let me tell you, that will completely demoralize your team. Nothing will defeat them more, take the wind out of their sails, than you as a leader taking credit for work they did. And so, my feeling is no matter what it takes, I'll interrupt people. I'll say, no. Let me tell you who did this. And you'll find that it goes back to that walking through the fire for you. They will totally do that when they start getting credit for the work that they do. It probably matters more than anything we've talked about today.
So how do I walk these 10 things out? Give me the practice.
Well, I told the group today that not every place is going to be perfect. We're all fallen human beings, and I've worked at places that had varying degrees of excellence, and sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't. I think the key is to understand that when you do hit an obstacle, when you do hit pushback, understand that don't give up, because very often that pushback is the very thing that will allow you to get to your greatest ideas. Sometimes it's the obstacles that cause us to really come up with another way. I've had so many times when somebody turned down my project. I got fired at 36, and I thought it was the end of the world for me, only to realize later that was the greatest thing that ever happened. Suddenly, the ideas that organization hated, other people were willing to pay big money for them. Right. So really understand, don't be so upset when obstacles, pushback, criticism happens, because it could drive you to be better than you thought. All right, so your latest book, The Way Back. Yep. Give me The Way Back, how Christians blew our credibility and how we get it back. It's really a book. I think everybody listening or watching today will know that Christianity has lost its credibility in the culture. We used to be criticized, now we're just ignored. I couldn't think of a single social area in our country where Christians have moved the dial forward in any capacity whatsoever. And as a marketing media guy, I thought, well, the answer is we're not telling our story well. We're not getting it out there. But the more we looked at it, the more we realized it's not a marketing problem. It's a Salesforce problem. We just don't believe in the product. And we suddenly discovered why, if we went on the street outside and started interviewing people about what they think of when they think of Christians, we suddenly realized why we get hypocritical, power hungry, phony. We started getting those kind of things because that's exactly what we are.
Is this the disclaimer, like, hey, the movie's great, but forgive the acting? The movie's great, but
exactly. And nobody walks out of the theater thinking, that was a terrible movie, but they tried really hard. No, nobody thinks that way. It was a terrible movie. Right. So I think when people go to church or they meet Christians and they realize we're not reading our Bible, we're not praying, we don't believe in the power of prayer, we don't show up at church very often, I went all the way back in history. I tried to find one era when Christians really impacted the culture. I had to go all the way back to the first century, the first generation of Christians, because they had no power, no money, no influence. It was illegal to be a Christian. And yet, they completely changed the course of the Roman Empire and changed the direction of the world. So, and it's because they lived it out. They didn't talk about it. They didn't boycott. They didn't protest. Remember a couple of years ago, we decided we'd boycott companies that said Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. Yep. Well, boy, that had an impact, huh?
Yeah. Every time we've tried to do that, I remember Baptist trying to boycott Disney.
Yes!
Failed miserably.
Doesn't work. In fact, I got a call from one of the leading Baptist guys who said, look, this is just so embarrassing. Could you set up a meeting between me and the chairman of Disney Studios? And we'd like to call it off because we're looking like idiots. Yeah. And so I did, and they shook hands and walked away. And it's just, we just have to be more sensitive. And I think if we can live out the life God's called us to live, that's when it starts to make an impact with people.
Well, Phil, thanks so much for your time, man.
Hey, I'm grateful. This is all great questions, by the way.
So with our custom media, we produce a lot of content for kids' worship experiences through our friends at Seeds Family Worship, Doorpost Songs, Yancy Ministries, and others. And Yancy is a great friend of ours. She is an incredible worship leader to multiple generations. So I'm talking kids, students, adults, all kinds of different worship experiences and age groups. And I talked with Yancy about the importance of using media in worship, and I also talked with her about how she uses lyric media, especially in her concert experiences and worship experiences. So from the expo floor of the NRB, here's my interview with Yancy. Check this out. Hey guys, I'm with my friend Yancy. So Yancy, thanks for coming over. Really appreciate your time. All right, so we've talked about this before, but I want to get into the importance of media content. Obviously, we create a lot of ready-made and custom media content for worship experiences, so that's adult, student, kids. So the importance of media, the use of media in what you do.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Well, I think it just comes down to it's programming your event. Any great thing that you're going to go to out there in the world outside of your church, like there's going to be things about it before it starts or throughout the event. It's just kind of like a movie has a score, and there's music that highlights certain emotions and increases awareness and whatnot, and media is a contributor to do that within your services and your special events and whatnot. So, it's like use the countdown video, use the bumper, all of these different things that just make your service not just be a person talking, teaching, doing a segment, but it really feeling like it's this living, breathing organism, and keeping it fun and interesting. That's the biggest thing, is not letting every week feel exactly the same.
So you're constantly on the road or in a worship experience environment. How important is it and this might look different in kids' world, but how important is it to take the audience on a journey from when they come in to when they leave? Do they all need to match and work together, or can it be disjointed songs?
Well, I mean, it can be both, but I think being strategic and being intentional in all those individual little choices that you make throughout your time that you're programming your service, that where you're gathered together, I think it's the difference of kind of good to great, where you're intentional and think, hey, how do I help illustrate this point or help these kids get this particular part that I want to teach or whatnot. And so you can find songs that, connect and underline and highlight and bold, the messages that you're teaching. And the great part is when it comes to songs get on the inside of us and they stick with us. So it might be 5 days later or a few weeks later that kid is, just doing something ordinary in their day to day, but that song comes to their remembrance. They start singing it, which very well might make them remember that Bible verse or that Bible story or whatever other thing you taught them. So music is kind of like the secret sauce glue to help, those truths not just get planted down on the inside of them, but to take root and to flourish.
What are the biggest types of media content that make the most impact in the worship experiences that you lead?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for me is like lyric videos that, have motion graphics and moving words on screen and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I make that available to other churches, as well as I use that firsthand in the family concerts that I do and leading worship for kids events and whatnot. So I feel like that's just kind of one of those things that it's way more exciting than just some still words on a solid color background that you can throw up with PowerPoint.
Right.
So I would say the lyric videos.
Do you like being attached to a click, or do you prefer to be loose?
I'm used to it. I think you can win at whatever set of cards you have that you're working with. So obviously, are there things you can do in a live setting with live instruments and whatnot, and changing arrangements of songs, or making little changes from week to week? Sure. Can you make that work for you? Absolutely. But if you study and you know your songs, even when you're using tracks, you know where all those holes are. You figure out how to navigate and use all of those to help you win and help you communicate what you need to with your audience, and you can still make it be a win.
So if you're doing let's say a 3 or 4 song set, how many of those are going to use a click track lyric video, and how many of those are going to be loose?
I mean, for me, they're going to, in my current state of how I'm doing life, it's all going to be on it to a track.
So you're on a click, so you would do 10 songs and they're all click. And you're going to use a lyric video. You're not going to intermix. You're going to all video every single one.
Yeah.
Why do you make that choice?
Well, because in the events that I'm doing, I'm a one-man show, so I need the energy.
Are you firing that?
No, someone else front of house is firing that stuff for me.
What's your cue? Give us a breakdown of
well,
say this.
So I travel with someone that kind of knows my setup and what my various fills are going to be and whatnot. Otherwise, sometimes when I'm doing a special conference event or whatnot and someone else is going to be triggering it, I attempt to write out like press play when I say da 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 da.
Right.
Of course, 95% of those time, those people do not follow that warning and always
You gotta go with it.
try to decide if I really meant what I said. But yeah, I try to then just say, yeah, when I say this, go ahead and hit play.
So one thing I love about your ministry is that you're not just, I mean, you write songs, perform songs, but it's not about, ultimately, it's not about the song. It's about you teaching the heart of worship to not only kids, but the leaders.
Yeah.
So walk me through that
Yeah.
part.
Well, I truly believe one of the things that God created us to do in this world, our purpose of existing, is to worship Him and bring Him praise. And so, you know, a lot of people look at worship as just kind of this thing that happens within our Sunday morning, you know, services and whatnot. And to look at it as that is selling yourself short on your own personal relationship with the Lord. I feel it's a way that we have to communicate with Him. It's a hiding place that we have to be in His presence. I know there have been so many times in my life that I was going through something and I needed the vocabulary that was in certain songs that I was singing at church. I was even leading at church at times where it's like you get to that point and you're like, I don't even know how to pray about this situation, you know, that I'm going through anymore. But yeah, the vocabulary that's in certain songs just give you the faith that you need and the vocabulary you need to go ahead and speak out and sing out what is true about God. And that's what I see about David. When we look in the Bible, he's our big kind of, you know, solo superstar of worship, you know, in the Bible. But we know he wasn't a perfect person, but he knew how to not just let worship be well, I was trying to think of a really smart way that I put this on Facebook like 2 days ago, and I can't think of what that is. But David, like worship was just a reflex that he had in life. So even when he needed a hiding place, even when he needed a shelter, even when he needed a rock, he spoke out and saying that God was those things. And I think it's that thing of, you know, renewing your mind, building your faith, and helping you speak out what is true about the character of God, even when you're needing, you know, that to spin around in your own personal situation that you're going through.
So that kind of heart moved you to write a curriculum about it.
Yeah.
So give me the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah. So I have a curriculum called Heartbeat. It's 5 full lessons you can do with your kids to teach them the heart of worship. We look at David for all the Bible stories in that series. The biggest thing was I was talking to, you know, children's ministry leaders about, you know, what happens in the context of worship within their programs. And just kind of knew walking away from those conversations, they don't even get it themselves to know how to break it down for their kids to get it. You know, they understand what we're doing isn't working, but they also don't understand how to get from the stuck place that they're at to that being a win. And so I developed the curriculum really just to give them words, information, you know, truth from God's word that they could give to their kids. And, you know, in the process, we're teaching the kids, but it's helping every volunteer that's in the room. It's helping church staff members that are leading areas of ministry. I've had feedback from some churches where they say the kids were going home so excited and talking about and sharing about what they were learning in this series that the parents were coming up saying, hey, we wish we were going through this in the adult sanctuary. So I've even talked to some churches that were taking their student ministry through this as well. So, I mean, I wrote it geared for preteens, kind of thinking of elementary kids, but there's a lot of meat there that I think you can also chop up and utilize and, you know, give to other teams. Some people are using the content even just geared for a worship team, just trying to educate and just develop and nurture this heart of worship in all of us as believers, because I truly believe like it's not just about doing songs and checking that box off the list for this week, but it's helping our kids today understand that they have this like hiding place with God of worship, because that's the thing that's going to help them when they're 16 years old or when they're 40 years old, you know, when they're going through something in life whether it be a family situation, a job thing, whatever. Like, worship is a gift you can give them truly for the rest of their life. And so that's why I think it's so important to like work on this and develop it in these early stages of life, because it can help them forever.
All right, so we worked on a lyric video for you for a new project called Coat of Many Colors.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting because this is a project that's kind of near and dear to you. So tell me about it.
Yeah. So it's always interesting how you write songs and they kind of fall into different categories and whatnot. And Coat of Many Colors is really a little bit of a unique song. It's kind of a Bible story song all about Joseph. For me, it's a pretty personal story as well. Over the years, certain seasons of life, I definitely clung to that story and hope that was in that story, and can see threads of that throughout my own life. But Coat of Many Colors, I have 2 different videos because I did make it for a project called Little Praise Party. But kind of knew like there was some life for this song beyond just what the Little Praise Party audience is, because that's a lot of young children, a lot of families that are checking that stuff out. So I had you guys make the lyric video as well, because it's one of those songs that it's like no matter how old you are, there's something you can learn from this story and within this song.
You mentioned Little Praise Party. Tell me about that, because that is a really exciting project.
It is. It's fun. So Little Praise Party is music that I make for younger kids, and those songs are very action-oriented, lots of little bite-sized truths from God's Word to put into the hearts of these young kids. And it's stuff that your kids will love, your churches, you can use it for your praise and worship time and preschool and young elementary classrooms. But you also can just put it on, before or after class to just kind of entertain them, be fun music that they can hear and see. But I'm really excited about all of this new music. Right now I have a new song releasing every single month. So you can stay tuned to Apple Music and Spotify and all the places you can access music, and through worshipHouseKids.com and get these newest releases.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The show notes for this episode are available now at MakingSundayHappen.com.
So, hey guys, I hope that you enjoyed our interviews with Phil Cooke and Yancy. Steve, give me one thing that you really took away from our interview with Phil.
I thought it was really key how he said that when you're leading a team of creatives, don't bombard them with like 15 different people trying to tell them what you want. Come together, whoever's leading the team, whoever's like your pastor or your leadership team, come together, figure out what the game plan is, all agree on what that is, and then send that to the creative team. So many times when you're dealing with creatives, I've been on both sides. Like if I'm trying to be a creative, you're getting 15 different responses, or if you're on the other side, you're bombarding the creative team with 15 different ideas. All come together, talk in a room, get the ideas hashed out, and then send one idea, concept to the team for them to execute.
Yeah, so another thing I took away is that he gives his clients 2 rounds of edits. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think a lot of times, sometimes in church world, if I'm the video guy at the church, there's this sense of, I have them on staff full time.
Perpetually.
Right. So maybe you set up some type of situation where you let them know, hey, here's what I make per hour. Here's what you pay me per hour. And because I'm making 3 more rounds of edits, this is the amount of time that it took me. This is the amount of money that you're spending on me, where I could be doing coffee with volunteers. I could be ministering to XYZ. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think it was great. I think it ties in. So I was talking about like on the I think that goes on the back end.
Correct.
Is when the concept comes to you, don't just bombard with 15 different edits. All come together, talk, make a list, and send that one edit back to your team. Yeah. And then that's going to save time and allow them to be more able to work on other stuff and think through other stuff better.
Yeah, good. All right, so next week on the show, it's pretty packed. So we're bringing you interviews with legendary Bible teacher Kay Arthur, who I started my career at Precept Ministries International, worked with Kay, and so had an opportunity to speak with her here at the convention. We also talked with Christian counselor June Hunt, all about depression, and I thought it was very interesting. We were trying to think, okay, what's the angle to making Sunday happen? And you as a church leader, you as a pastor, there are times when you're down. There are times when you're depressed. And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that without showing, sometimes pastors need to or want to show that they're on top of the world. Nothing's wrong with them. And so June talks about how to deal with depression as a pastor and where to go and how to get help and things like that. And now that you get help, you're more accessible to other people. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think she talked a lot about how your tendency is to hide it. And so as pastors and as leaders, we're going to hide when we're going through a valley or a season where we're struggling. And so I think her challenge is very good to any person in any sort of leadership at a church to not just hide and smash that, but press into finding out how God wants to bring you through that.
Yeah. All right, so next week is Kay Arthur, June Hunt, and also I sat down with 3 pastor friends of mine, and they each gave me one sermon prep tip. So for teaching pastors, this is a great interview that I'd love for you to see on how 3 different pastors, 3 different perspectives of pastors prep for their sermon. So all that is next week on the show. Show notes for this episode are at makingsundayhappen.com. That's makingsundayhappen.com. I want you to go there and pull down, watch the show, look at the links, get all the show notes there, makingsundayhappen.com. All right, so thank you so much for listening and watching. Go out there and create some incredible worship experiences this weekend. I'll catch you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit makingsundayhappen.com.